and welcome to another episode of A Ghost in the Magazine. I'm Elle.
I'm Jay.
And today we are going to be talking about Bringing Out the Dead.
It's not Goodfellas, but it isn't Hugo.
It wasn't just Daddy Cage, but I'm a big John Goodman fan. And so I came into this expecting, I don't know what I was expecting, The Big Lebowski, but I got whatever this is.
John Goodman there 10% of the time.
He's not in there very much.
I mean, like, his acting is 10% of the time. He's on screen for maybe 10 minutes, and he's there for 10%.
True. I think the first thing that I bristled at in this movie was John Goodman using a racial slur to describe a Chinese restaurant. And I was like, okay. But I mean, characters, I get it, but...
It's the 90s. And like on that, this film opens with a line written on screen. It doesn't need to be there. It's before all of the studio credits, and it just says, this film is set in the middle of the 90s. This film came out in 1999. We don't need that.
Something that was there that didn't need to be there is kind of the theme of this film overall.
Mm-hmm.
It was directed by
Scorsese.
Yeah, the music in it was amazing. I love the soundtrack and the way that they used the music with the different scenes to set everything up. The atmosphere was really great. That was really immersive. And Daddy Cage did Daddy Cage shit in this movie.
I want to dispute something that I wasn't here for last week. That he has a potato body.
Did you watch that movie though?
No. Here's the thing, right? Okay. He may have a bad arse. He is ripped in this film. I'm willing to overlook the Ted Bundy eyebrows. That's all I'm going to say on that subject.
I'm just saying, if you had to watch Between Worlds, you would understand. He's just Daddy DeVito long legs. That's all he was in that one.
Lumpy, sweaty Jesus.
I don't like to feel like I'm body shaming anyone, but I had to see too much greasy banging.
If you wanted to watch Nick Cage banging, you'd watch The Sorcerer's Apprentice. There's no sex in that film, but he is in it. There's a weird scene where this kid has a Tesla machine that plays, like, I can't even remember. I think it's like Chasing Cars, but it's some shit 90s song.
What the fuck is with Nick Cage? He has some really bad decisions, and then he has some absolute bangers like Mandy. And, you know, this one's not bad. I wouldn't put it in Mandy territory, but this is probably slightly better than The Color Out of Space, in my opinion.
He's like a functioning Marlon Brando, but like old Marlon Brando, like Island of Dr. Moreau Marlon Brando.
Well, on this particular film, this Red Death heroin is the underpinning of all of it. That problem never gets anywhere close to solved, but we see all of the havoc it's wrecking. For a movie this long, I feel like I should have had some goddamn resolution with that, or at least know who's doing it.
Yeah.
All we hear is Cy saying, it's the kids.
What is he selling? Is he selling opiates? He sold Nick Cage a single pill. He swallowed it. It didn't dissolve. And then Nick Cage flipped the fuck out. He's like that one kid that goes to a frat party, takes like half a shot. I was like, I'm drunk. You know what I mean?
That character, he's so on the edge anyway. Him freaking out from just being in that situation is a possibility. I liked the aesthetic of that drug den, I have to admit.
The like red room.
Yep, everyone's just chilling. There's a cool fish tank.
It's shitty CGI. It's like pre-Nemo CGI.
I wasn't even paying attention. I just saw that there was a fish tank in the background.
I mean, you go in thinking, oh, this is a Martin Scorsese film. And then you watch maybe like 10 minutes of it and you're like, oh, is this a Scorsese film? I could tell from the extended philosophical voiceover or the gratuitous aesthetic shots of the seedy underbelly of New York or the overt heavy-handed American Catholic themes.
And it felt like it was so ambitious, but it felt like it wasn't quite reaching that connection. And maybe that's the thing. All of these things that never get solved. The ways that the story doesn't come back together is kind of unsatisfying. Although it seems the dad being on life support or whatever is like an allegory for him suffering through as like a walking zombie until he goes into the light with the lady.
It is strange to think that he's being haunted by the spirit of this wee girl that he couldn't see of. And she's like, why did you let me die? And the way he makes peace with that is by letting this man who obviously wanted to die go. This movie wants to do like 6 different things at once. and
Yeah.
does maybe two of them well.
I will say though, after the movie that we had to watch last week, this one was a relief.
The
No.
ambulance drivers, I think like three different types that you see paired up with him, all older men, even if it's like a little bit older, like the last guy.
Yeah.
You see three different types of people who would go into this profession. There's the one who's doing it for money, that's John Goodman, who is doing it to become the boss. Then there's Marcus, who is kind of an adrenaline junkie, not gonna lie. He's
Yeah.
doing it purely for the hit,
Yes.
and he's weirdly religious. And then you've got the last guy, who is just cruel, who sees this as a way to exploit the system to satisfy himself. Should have been a police officer.
Everyone else like that is a police officer, that's for sure.
Except Grizz. We don't talk
Yes.
that way about Grizz, because Grizz will take off his sunglasses if you say that about Grizz.
Grizz had actually cool Mac from Always Sunny energy, though, like ocular pat downs.
Absolutely. The worst thing about this film is that the two best characters in it are stereotypes. Because Marcus and Grizz, two favorite characters, hands
Yeah.
down.
So I thought it was fucking hilarious when that pregnant lady is like, "Oh, you're gonna be coming back to get me," and I'm like, "Oh, the freaking mid-90s gall of being able to have an ambulance when you're going into labor. Now it would cost you fucking 13 grand to call an ambulance and have it take you to the hospital. It's like you're having that baby in the car if that's the case."
It's something me and Ali have always talked about. I'm moving there to work. If slash when we have kids, we'll come back here for the last trimester. Two things that shouldn't be privatized is the healthcare system and the rail network.
Right.
I thought, and this is a strange thing to say, this is a deeply religious film. You got a resurrection, you got a virgin birth, you've got Road to Damascus moment where Nick Cage freaks out on the drugs and takes her away. And then you've also got No Justice, him saving sinners.
Okay, but here's another one. What's her name?
Mary.
Oh God, her name's Mary. She's the nurturing, kind, caring woman who brings him back from the edge. She's like Mary.
And she was a junkie. Mary Magdalene.
Yeah, no, I see all of that now. I didn't think about it when I was watching it.
Also, Noel is Christ. Noel is Jesus when he was in the desert for 40 days and 40 nights, and the devil showed him all the corners of the world, and he was like, yeah, all right, I'll take that. But he can't enjoy it. He's forever thirsty. He runs away from people who are dying constantly. He can't die. He was shot in the head. And then the second time we see him outside of the hospital, he is covered in blood and asking people to kill him because he can't do it himself. The way his dreads are, it looks like it's the Thorn crime.
That makes a lot of sense. When he goes on that call and Sai is impaled on that railing, gave me so much anxiety. How are they fucking cutting that without clipping him in? And that was a problem because Nick Cage ended up having to go over and grab him.
I don't want to keep going on about religion. However, Sai was impaled in his right hand side by an iron bar. Christ was stabbed with a spear when he was crucified in his right hand side. I'm seeing things where there probably aren't, but I mean, this guy also directed The Last Temptation of Christ, where Willem Dafoe is Jesus, so I feel like you can say a lot.
I get it because I feel like Frank wants to bang Mary, but when the dad dies, why didn't he go to the mother, his wife, his next of kin? Instead, he goes to lay in the
The
bed with
estranged
Mary.
daughter. And that's a weird thing. Like, he goes in, she's not crying. He's not crying. He's still got some blood on him from like saving Noel. Weird, man. Not a lot of horror aspects in this, gotta say.
No, it looked like the only horror mechanism at all was seeing Rose on everyone.
Yeah.
That could just be psychological.
It's Scorsese trying to make Shutter Island a couple of years before.
Well, I guess him being able to talk with the dad when he is in
Oh yeah,
a coma
that
or
is
like whatever. He's not really in
kind
a
of.
coma, he's awake.
Yeah, like his eyes do not close. They're open the entire time.
Yeah, that's creepy.
I have expected to actually see the dad's spirit standing at the window, like Nick Cage said he was going to be. This character has a name, but we're calling him Nick Cage.
His name is Frank. Yes, Frank Pierce. He always has the most basic bitch names in these, like Joe the trucker and Frank the ambulance driver. Jesus Christ.
Is it a basic bitch name, or is it we only consider him Nick Cage?
I think it might be that. He's just
Madman
daddy.
Kal-El himself.
I mean, in Willy's Wonderland, he was simply a quiet drifter. He didn't even have a name. They didn't bother because they just knew everyone was going to be like, it's Nick Cage.
I feel like it would be worse if he had a basic name, because it's like Alfred Montoya. I'm probably getting that wrong, but he played Doc Ock in like the Spider-Man 2, and I know this actor. He is well respected. He was also in The Sorcerer's Apprentice.
It all goes back to that.
But it's just like, if I see him, I'm like, oh, it's your man. I don't say that about Nick Cage whenever he's on screen. The kid's name is I.B. Bangin.
Yeah, I laughed my ass off at that.
What's his real name? Frederick. All right, Freddy. No, Frederick. All right, I.B. Bangin. Martin Scorsese, who you may know as that one fish from Shark Tale. Genuinely. Queen Latifah was in this?
Oh, she was Love, the dispatcher. The one that Marcus was hot for. And Martin Scorsese was the male dispatcher, apparently.
Mr. O was a weird one.
Yeah, that was an interesting character.
This is homeless people who probably couldn't afford healthcare now. It's weird looking back at this.
It used to be that they would write off if you were poor or you didn't have a job, and now it's uncommon. You know, I have to say, I came into this month just stoked because the Nick Cage movies that I had already seen, at least the bad ones were funny. And to some extent, The Color Out of Space wasn't a great movie, but I would say it was medium tier. And the problem is there's been movies in this, like the last one, that were just, I didn't know a movie could be that bad. Bad Moon was my rock bottom, and Steph was arguing with me that the last one was worse than Bad Moon. It's been a month. I'm ready for it to be over. I'm ready to be done with Daddy Cage month.
I do think Martin Scorsese has a very interesting thing to say about Catholicism in general, particularly American Catholicism or American religion. Like in one scene in this film, you see Statue of Mary standing in the corner of the Our Lady of Perpetual Mercy or whatever it's called, and she has a neon halo. Like that's very Americana.
Also, there's like a very gritty New York style to this that you see not done as well in other movies. There was this school of movies from the 90s when I was growing up that's not as sharp, it's not as artsy. This is darkly beautiful. The way that the city is, the way that the music moves with the mood of the character.
You have this air of the music and like the atmosphere of the place. It's like claustrophobic because the streets are always packed with people. And then I think the first thing that got me atmospheric and hit me in my soul was watching the sweat roll off John Goodman's face when he's trying to resuscitate the dude. I can feel the heat in this, even though it's at night. I realized something. To keep going with my religious bullshit.
No, go for it.
So whenever the cops show up to where Sai is impaled, there's a scene where you see two rabbis pointing the lights up at him. I don't know what Scorsese is trying to say here, but if we're going off the idea that Sai is maybe a representation for the two thieves on the side of Christ as he's being crucified, and them aiming the lights up at him to make like a show of it for the people. And it's worse when you realize they're like Orthodox Jews with the curls and the hat, the beard and everything. And they're helping the police. The police are like, oh, I deputized them because they give us money.
Yeah, that was weird.
It's the state and church working together, which is kind of what happened with the Romans and the Jewish council.
Okay, so as we're kind of looking back over what we've talked about so far, we haven't really talked a lot about a synopsis or gone play by play. And the thing about this movie is there's not really a structure to it. It's very stream of consciousness. And I think that the biggest piece of structure we have here is him encountering the man who's had the heart attack, the man who's had a heart attack going on life support, and all of these crazy things happening in between. Well, this haunting is ramping up, I guess, psychological disorder, whatever. And then once he releases the man from life in general, yes, everything, I guess it's better. We don't really know.
The plot isn't like A to B to C. It's like A to D to Q to X.
Yeah.
It doesn't really have a consistent inciting incident. It just has characters sort of returning, and it's like slice of life with a very background sort of driving force behind it.
And like we said, I think the horror aspect of it is a really second, third tier.
It's not gore, it's not jump scares, it's unnerving.
Maybe it's psychological, maybe it's supernatural. Nobody knows.
Who's to say? I only have really two pieces of criticism for this film. One we talked about was shitty CGI fish with an extended look at it. It's very clearly a screen, which, you know, I was expecting more from Martin Scorsese's scar of Shark Tale, but the other criticism is the very clearly plastic doll dead baby, because the twins being born of the Virgin, one of them is an actual child, and the other, they've gone down, picked up my first baby, covered it in tomato sauce like it's in the fucking Goodfellas or something, and then wrapped it in tinfoil like a burrito. They could have done better.
So unappealing. Another thing, Frank, when he goes into the opium den, I think is pretty much what it is, and talks to Cy, he says, I just got off it. So he's a former drug addict. That's the only time he mentions it. He doesn't really talk about it otherwise.
Well, he's alcoholic. He's self-medicating with coffee and whiskey. And
Yeah.
what looked in one scene like industrial grade alcohol, it
Ew.
was like in a plastic bottle that Marcus had, which had instructions on the side. It was paint thinner, but he just sniffs it and goes, "Oh, I hate gin."
Oh, I didn't even
So
notice the bottle. I just thought it was gin. I just took his word
he
for
just
it.
goes, "I know you're holding," and he takes out like a Trader Joe's plastic bottle of ethanol. After that point, whenever he goes out with Crazy Dude who wants to beat the shit out of Noel and does a few times, he's in the back cooking up a cocktail for himself.
It was
Like it's,
adrenaline, glucose, and vitamin D.
and he puts
Okay.
the oxygen mask on, and he has the drip bag hung up. It's a really weird thing.
The other thing is he never eats, which is probably why he's administering glucose to himself. I don't know. But John Goodman in the beginning says, you never eat. And then when he gets the
And
pizza, you never see
oh
him
my god,
eat.
I thought that was hilarious. Marcus brings in a full big thing of pizza and a can of Coke, and neither of them are hungry.
There's probably layers to this, but I didn't even think about the ethanol thing. I think he just picked up a medical bottle of ethanol from the ambulance floor and drank it.
Mm-hmm. They do like mix it with orange or something, and he passes a cup to Marcus as well. They're both drinking. And after he drinks it, there's like a change almost in the lighting. I noticed like he put his hand on Marcus, and the way the light reflected off it, it looked like his hand was melting into uniform.
There's a lot of things I probably missed on one watch, I would say. And I definitely didn't pick up on all of those interesting religious things like you did. I think I wanted to say the thing about the metal pole in the side, but that makes sense.
Yeah, one of them repents, one of them doesn't. And the one that repents, he's like, "Oh, you have a kingdom in heaven." And at the same time, while this is happening, he's looking off to the city on the other side. Like, isn't that beautiful? The one that's having like the flames all shot at it. He's surrounded by sinners of all kinds. Like, you have drug addicts, you have the lame, you have the guy with no legs crawling across the crosswalk. You have the lowest of the low, but he goes out and treats them. He thinks this is a thankless task. So it's kind of like if Jesus was cynical.
Well, there is a hopelessness to this. No matter how much they fix people up, they just come right back in to that overloaded ass hospital. Could you just maybe not go back out and take this again so that we have to give you more? You have to come back here and get more.
He's like, "Oh, you've been snorting cocaine for 3 days and now you've got a headache and you want us to help you." I don't think we should help you. Like, but then the second someone showed up and I wasn't expecting it, but she was like really welcoming to that person.
It was Mr. O. She's
Oh,
like,
it was
he just
Mr.
needs a
O.
bath.
Oh my god.
I can understand their frustration, how helpless they must feel as medical professionals. Addiction takes intensive treatment and psychological therapy and all this other stuff, and that's not something they have the resources for there. So they're just trying to put a band-aid on something that just keeps opening up. And it's kind of like the little bit of hope that exists in such a helpless situation, which is beautiful.
To end on, I would like to suggest other Scorsese films to you that were
Yes.
better. Although I will say none of these passed the Bechdel test, which is something that I noticed in this film as well. But Goodfellas, it is too long. However, Goodfellas is fantastic. The Last Temptation of Christ, if you want to see Willem Dafoe as Jesus. Taxi Driver, I could take or leave. Raging Bull is good. Shutter Island is scarier than this film and has Ben Kingsley.
Okay, so next week is Vampire's Kiss, which we covered on our 31 Days of Horror, but we haven't given it a proper full episode, and I feel like that's one that really deserves it. So until then, you can find us on Twitter at GITM Podcast. You can find me at Nocturnical.
And you can follow me at Atlas_Snow.
Okay, bye.